Thank you. Next one is flock safety. Presentation on their license plate reader cameras.
Presentation Chief and flock safety.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council. As you may recall, we've had a few conversations about the Hamtramck Police Department considering license plate readers in our community. Tonight I brought Laura Holland from Flock Safety, and she's going to provide some information to you. Just as a reminder, this is just informational at this point. We have not done any RFPs, we've not sent anything out to bid, we've not done any memorandums of understanding or made any attempts to purchase any equipment. This is kind of just informational to see if it's something the City Council is interested in moving forward with. We have had several cases in which our Detective Bureau believes that we would have had some very good investigative techniques had we had license plate readers in our community. One of those being the carjacking that we had on Conant. I know some of you had mentioned that at a meeting, and we actually were able to get some information captured off of another community's license plate reader camera involving our stolen vehicle that helped us lead to an arrest, which the city manager had updated you on an arrest that we had made. Some other information about license plate readers in other communities and some success stories that they've had, where license plate readers in the metro Atlanta area were able to find a vehicle containing a kidnapped 1-year-old child that had been taken from his mother. There's been several silver alerts, which are missing elderly people with dementia and things like that, where they've been able to locate those using license plate reader technology. There's been reductions in other communities around the country of firearm violence and violent crimes such as robberies and carjackings, which you know that we've seen an increase of those in our area. So I would like to mention a couple communities in our area that do have license plate reader cameras, including the City of Detroit, Michigan State Police, the City of Dearborn, Roseville, Oakland County, Macomb County, Ecorse and River Rouge, Madison Heights, Dearborn Heights, Ferndale, Troy, Lincoln Park. Those are cities that surround us that use license plate reader technology. So I just wanted to introduce Laura Holland from Flock Safety to give you some information from their company's perspective. And if you have questions, I'm here to kind of jump in with you.
Yes. Yeah, thanks so much, Chief Moyes, for inviting us here today. And thank you, Mayor and Council and City Manager, for letting us share some information on our approach to the license plate reader. I believe that you all will have the PowerPoint that we'll walk through, and I would love if the audience can also see the PowerPoint as well. So our company was founded in 2017 by an individual who himself was a victim of property crime. And he had individual cameras on his home in his community, and he provided that footage to the police after he was burglarized. But the police told him that they couldn't really do anything with that information. What they really needed was the image of the car that the individual fled in, the back of the license plate. And so our founder said, you know what, I'm going to figure out how to make this happen. And so he built the very first Flock Falcon device and put up a license plate reader in his community after talking with his neighbors. Sure enough, a few weeks later, that same individual came back to rob a neighbor, and they, this time, had the data that the police needed to be able to solve the crime. They had the picture of the license plate. And so after he started to see this success in his community, he said, wow, other neighborhoods, other communities probably have this same problem and want to partner with police to provide them the data that they need to solve crime. And so he created our company, Flock Safety. You can go ahead and go forward 2 slides. People often don't realize that policing can be very challenging, right? You've got a lot of different needs and desires from your community that you have to balance. Our technology tries to multiply the force by providing an image of the back of the car with these license plate readers so that police can act quickly in the event of a crime. You can go forward 2 more slides too. Most people don't realize that about 70% of all crimes are committed with a vehicle. And so we see that implementing this type of tool, having this objective data, can really make a long-term impact on the challenges, the safety issues that your communities face. You can go forward again. So how does the technology work, right? I keep saying license plate reader, picture of the back of a car, but you'll see on the very next slide an example image of what our technology pulls. So our cameras can be solar powered or AC powered, depending on what works best for your community. And they take an image of the back of every vehicle that passes by this individual camera. We can then allow police officers to search based on things like the plate, whether there is a plate or not. We know a lot of times there's a temporary tag or a plate was removed. They can also search by the make of the car, by the style of the car, if it's an SUV, if it's a sedan, and they can also search by the color. This allows police to have more data points to be able to pursue their investigations after getting leads from a variety of sources. A couple things that we want to highlight that we are not from the very beginning, right? We are not people. You cannot search people in flock safety system. We are not facial recognition, and we are not traffic enforcement. We do not allow cities to send traffic tickets or red light tickets. We are purely a crime-solving tool and focused on that use case alone. You can go to the next slide. I've already covered a couple of the things that we're not, right? But I also want to highlight that we only store the data for about 30 days. So that means that your police will have 30 days to be able to investigate crimes that occurred with this information. And unless there's an active investigation, that the data is then downloaded onto the police record systems, all other data is deleted after that 30-day period. You can go to the next slide. So there's really three ways that this technology works, and I think it's important to distinguish between the three ways because you might have questions about each specific way. The first way is proactive, and that's where we provide real-time alerts to law enforcement whenever vehicles that are known to be associated with a crime enter your city. So we will provide those alerts based on the National Criminal Information Council's list of felony warrants and stolen vehicles. We will also provide those alerts based on amber alerts and silver alerts for missing seniors and missing children. Those proactive alerts we see actually help people get a longer term view of crime, because most people don't realize that when a stolen vehicle enters your community, they're not just coming into the community to have a fun ride. There's often a series of other crimes associated with that individual stolen vehicle. And so by giving your officers proactive notice about the stolen vehicle entering your community, they can actually end up preventing other crimes from occurring, like property crime or sometimes potentially violent crime. The other piece of our system is investigative, and that's where, like I said, we allow your officers to go back in time 30 days to search to find what vehicles could have been associated with a specific crime. We can share some more examples of that, but the investigative portion is really important because we know we have to balance the need to provide law enforcement with the data that they need to investigate and the protections of civil liberties, right? So we're not just tracking long-term where the data could potentially be misused. And so we've really tried to create that balance with that 30-day time period. You can go to the next slide. The most important part of the conversation for councils, for elected officials, mayors, for city managers, is how you make that balance, right? How you prioritize safety and also make sure that you have the right mechanisms to hold folks accountable and to be transparent with your community about how you're using this technology. We at Flock have tried to make that easier for you to do. So we can go to the next slide. There's a couple things about a Flock partnership that I want to highlight. I know that you guys are still in the very early stages, but if you choose to pursue a Flock safety partnership, you guys will own your footage. That means that you guys determine who you share with, who your police department will not share with, and they'll include those details in a policy. We at Flock will never sell your information, and we don't share it without your permission. I've already talked about that 30-day data retention, but we also want to highlight how important it is to provide this objective data to police, especially because we know how unreliable eyewitness accounts are, right? And so by focusing on the things that are objectively illegal and providing an objective data point in an investigation, you can often get a hold of or get a handle on any kind of misinformation or leads that aren't going to be accurate. We have top-level cybersecurity. I'm happy to answer more questions about that. We're SOC 2 certified, and we store end-to-end in different encrypted keys. We also require an investigative reason for every single search that's done in our system. And that investigative reason is then proactively reported in an audit portal where your chief can then see every single time her officers search the system and why they searched, what filters they used. That's for your officers in your community, but also anybody else who searches in the system as well. And so we made that tool to really be able to allow our chiefs to act in the event that a tool is misused, because we all know we can't prevent them from being misused. We can only act in the event that it happens. I've already talked about a couple other things, not facial recognition, not predictive policing. We don't connect to any third-party databases, so the law enforcement network is totally separate from Flock Safety System. We don't connect to Carfax, to DMV, right? All of those things are separate from Flock Safety as an additional privacy protection. And the last thing I want to highlight, I don't know if you can click on that transparency portal link, but we created a transparency portal that we provide to our customers, and it allows them to communicate with their communities how they use the technology, right? So this is an example out of Jackson, where they've highlighted some of their policy details, right? They highlight what's detected, what's not detected, how they use it, who in their department has access to the information. They also highlight the number of cameras that they own and the number of hot list hits. So, those hot lists, that's what I said about the stolen vehicles, those alerts that they've gotten in 30 days. Other communities share even more details. Some communities share their public search audits or who all they share access with. So depending on what you all would want to include in your portal, this is a tool that we've made so that you can be transparent and let people know how exactly you're using the system, what it is and what it is not. To conclude, we'll go back to the presentation, and I just want to talk you guys through a couple of real-world examples, right? So you can see, in addition to what Chief Moyes shared locally and from Georgia, some other examples of places where this technology has made a difference. So you can go forward, I think, 3 slides? Yeah, that one. Excuse me.
I'm just going to talk about that one, and I didn't know you brought that one up.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so this is out of Dearborn, in a really sad situation. And this woman was reported missing in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. This is a young mother with children, and she was believed to be taken and endangered because of her partner in a relationship. And no one had any idea where she was. But the Murfreesboro Police Department is a Flock Safety customer, and they worked to put the vehicle that they thought she might be associated with into our system. And they actually got a hit on that vehicle in Dearborn, and it ended up initiating a short chase where some gunfire ended up being exchanged with the Michigan State Police and the individuals driving the car. And when everything ended, unfortunately, they found this woman who had been kidnapped deceased in the back of the vehicle. And the 2 individuals that were driving the car were on their way to Michigan to get rid of to Canada to get rid of the body. And so this is an example of a situation in which this 6-year-old who had no idea where her mom was would have never had resolution about what happened unless the police had this data to be able to act. You can go to the next slide. This is a situation out of Dayton. This happened actually in February, and this individual, Mr. Hamilton, shot and murdered someone that he knew in an interpersonal conflict, which unfortunately is where most gun violence happens. He then stole a vehicle to flee the scene, and Dayton had installed our cameras, and they actually immediately found Mr. Hamilton. And those detectives said that Flock needed to be highlighted because without that technology, they wouldn't have been able to find this suspect. You can go to the next slide. This is out of Van Buren. A 26-year-old woman was hit by a vehicle on a service road, and unfortunately they weren't going to have a lead unless they had installed our technology. They had found some debris at the end of the road, and they actually had an image of the vehicle around the time that they passed, or around the time that they expected that it had happened, and they ended up finding that suspect by identifying the vehicle elsewhere and matching the debris to his vehicle where he confessed to the crime. You can go to the next slide. This is the example she talked about earlier, an Amber Alert, and then the last one I think can just show the longer term implications. You can go to the last slide, of installing this technology. So when police have the tools that they need to effectively solve crime, we know that clearance rates can decrease. We know that crime can be deterred and reduced. And this is in Cobb County, Georgia, one of our very first customers. After 2 years, they have solved 100% of their homicides, which is really unheard of in a county that large and with crime as high as it is in the metro Atlanta area. Police Chief Van Hoosier credits our technology specifically with being able to help and get those cases cleared. So I'm happy to answer any questions from you guys now or later, but thanks so much for having us to talk about it.
I do have it. Thank you. Go.
Thank you so much for being here and giving us the presentations and illustration. So what is the cost for the city?
Yeah, so we are $3,000 per device per year.
$3,000 per device. So if this, every crimes or every investigations, who is responsible for the actual cost? I know we pay for the equipment, but say a victim called in and now there's an investigation going on. So the patrons pay for it, or it's
Yes, that's a great question. So we are a subscription model. So that means that whoever owns the device will pay a yearly subscription fee. So if, let's say, Hamtramck had one device, they would pay $3,000 per year that they leased that device from us.
Is there, like, did they have to sign a consent form before there's investigation going on? Like, anyone requested, like, you taking it, you know?
You're talking about like the victim of a crime would have
Victim
to
of
sign
crime,
up?
like, do they have to sign a form to give away their privacy, their rights to get an investigation going on?
No, because basically we're taking a police report from them and then using either data that they, and information that they have provided, maybe it was a red car, maybe they knew part of the license plate, and then we're using, so their information isn't being compromised in any way because it's not part of the data coming off of the license plate reader. It's strictly just trying to find a license plate for a vehicle, which we all know is visible to the everyday public every day when you're driving down the street.
Sure.
I think that answers.
Thank you. I mean, I love to see the community safety. You know, this is a tool that we can utilize and give the benefit of the doubt that it's going to help the community safety. So it's pretty good.
Mr. Murphy.
So she introduced us, so it's up to us to what we don't think about. If you don't find the plate, how you going to read it? You got to think about that too. So, okay.
Mr. Mayor, so, is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Ms. Laura, thank you. I'm really a big supporter of the camera system. I've been talking to Chief Moisey and, city manager previously to have those kinds of systems in place in our city to reduce the crime. And if you reduce the crime, our insurance rate going to go down. The safer city will pay less money for their insurance. Many people are complaining with our Hamtramck city insurance is high. I don't know, one thing to not mention with you what you said. I was doing a little Google search. It's a $2,500 for park camera to install. But you said $3,000.
Yes, yeah, we just had a price increase. That $2,500 was.
Increased to our city.
I know. Sadly, we increased on April 1st. Yes, so we had been the same price since before the pandemic, and due to all of our park costs, we had to increase.
And you have to sign up for certain years, or how does it work?
No, so we have different customers do different things. We have some cities that will do 1 year, some cities will do 2, or as much as 5.
What is your headquarters located at?
Our headquarters is in Atlanta, Georgia.
And you guys 24/7 customer service? Or?
We are.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you to give us the presentation. I have a question. Sometimes a fake car dealer plate, are you able to catch those things?
Yes, we catch an image of every vehicle that passes, and so the way that it will work in the system is if it's a temporary tag or a fake plate, it will be indicated as not an actual plate.
And why you keep the record only for 1 month?
Yeah, so we created that standard as a balance between, like I said, the need to be able to provide investigative data and then not wanting to have so much data that could potentially be misused. And so we tried to create that middle path between some privacy advocates and then public safety advocates.
Thank you very much. I'd like to move forward. I hope.
Okay, we're not voting, but is that, can it be used to track, speeding cars and reckless drivers too?
So
Yeah.
it's not used for traffic enforcement. I will say that we've had some communities where they do have a lot of reckless driving, which is a crime in their community. They can't identify the vehicles that were on the road during that time period, but they have to use that in addition to other data in order to make a case about reckless driving.
All right, thank you. Any more questions?
I just had a quick question, Mayor. Is this tied into lien?
We do not tie directly to lien. No. All of that has to be searched outside of our database.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.